Good evening and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for Derry Water Well Testing Week. We're really excited to have you and Granite State Analytical and New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services. Town of Derry Public Health Department has joined with these two entities who provide educational information and water testing services. Our office thinks this is a great opportunity for the town of Derry residents and surrounding communities who have private wells at their home residence. So without further ado, please let me introduce Amy Hudner and Kim Aviato from the DES to begin our talk. Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Yes, so, I think so. I'm Amy Hudnor, and I'm the Private Well Coordinator at the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services. And along with my colleague, Kim Aviato, we're going to talk about private well testing today. So we're going to go do an overview of private wells in New Hampshire and also in Derry, and then we're going to talk about the common contaminants and their potential health impacts. We're going to give our recommendations that all private well owners test for, and we're going to talk about water treatment and our Be Well Informed web tool to help make treatment decisions. And then we're going to open it up to questions for Kim and I, and after that we'll turn over the mic to Granite State Analytical. So in Derry, you all have about, oh, this is very small. You all have sorry guys, my eyesight is shifting and I might need to grab a different pair of glasses. Hold on just a moment. Happens to the best of us, right? So about 36% of Derry residents are using private wells, as opposed to the statewide, it's about 45% on private wells. So you obviously have a sizable municipal water, public water system here, but of course a large number of you are on private wells. And so the reason why we're focusing on private well users today and in general is that there's no statewide requirement for private well owners to test or treat their water. It's kind of like you all have to become your own water operators, your own expert. Whereas with a public water system, you have operators that are trained and they're required, and the DES, Drinking Water Bureau, is the enforcement entity that makes sure they're doing their required water testing and treatment if things are above health limits. So with a private well owner, you become that person, you know, that operator for your own household. And although we'd like to believe that water is just naturally safe and clean and has nothing harmful in it, that's just not the case. So it's a knowledge that a private well owner needs to have, and so that's why we're focusing more and more on private well users in New Hampshire. And so there's a number of things that are potentially in your well water, and I like to kind of clump them in these categories to make it easy to kind of distinguish between different types of contamination. We tend to think of pollutants most. Over here on the left, so we have PFAS is probably the most recently famous pollutant, and also MTBE. Then in the middle, there's things from your plumbing that can be getting into your water, particularly when the water's sitting in the pipes for a long period of time, such as overnight or while you're away at work. So lead and copper are the big ones in plumbing. And then there's naturally occurring things like arsenic. Well, the biggest ones in New Hampshire are arsenic, radon, a little less so uranium. These are naturally occurring in the rock and soil, and they can be in the well water. So those are the kind of the basic categories. And we tend to we tend to be a lot more, we tend to think of natural things and man-made pollutants in a different way. Our brains process it differently, and we tend to, be more concerned about a pollutant. It feels scarier, it seems more dangerous, and we're more likely to know about it, and also have media coverage and things of that nature. Whereas things that are naturally occurring, I've been like the person in this photo out there, drinking water from the river and, and things of that nature. But we tend to be, think things that are natural are safe for us and good for us. So we're going to try to kind of go over all the things so that that you have, the whole list of possible well water contaminants. So we're going to talk about that, and I'm going to introduce Kim Aviato. She's going to go over some of the more common well water contaminants and their potential health impacts.
All right. Good evening, everyone. So as Amy mentioned, for my part of the presentation, I'll be sharing some information about health effects of the common water contaminants that we see in this part of New Hampshire. So for my slides, you'll hear about contaminants and some potentially serious health risks associated with them. So before I start, I just wanted to take a moment to emphasize that the purpose of this information is to educate and help you make informed decisions about your private well. The good news is that every single one of the contaminants that I'm about to mention is testable and treatable in drinking water. So our goal is really that this information helps you make healthy decisions for your household on a private well. So first, starting with E. coli. E. coli is a bacteria that can be found in drinking water. E. coli is a form of coliform bacteria which indicates fecal contamination in the well. This contamination can either be naturally occurring from sources such as wildlife, which can enter the well during floods or heavy rainfall events, or it can indicate faulty septic systems or waste management systems nearby. E. coli, if it's found in drinking water, it's considered an immediate health hazard. So you should treat the well promptly and look out for symptoms that resemble food poisoning. So things like diarrhea, vomiting, cramps, nausea, headaches, fever, and fatigue. E. coli is especially dangerous for people with compromised immune systems, the elderly, and small children who may have a harder time fighting off infections than older individuals. If E. coli is present in your well, we recommend that you treat it, and we also recommend that you test yearly for it, especially after heavy rainfall or floods, which can allow those contaminants to enter the well. Next, we have arsenic. Arsenic is a naturally occurring element that is found throughout New Hampshire and is commonly detected in wells at low levels. Occasionally, those levels are high enough to pose a potential health risk to people who are drinking that water over a long period of time, so typically from months to years. The main ways that arsenic enters our bodies is through ingestion, so that's either through drinking contaminated water or from some food sources. In general, concentrations of arsenic over 5 parts per billion, or micrograms per liter, is considered a health risk for the general population. And this is because it can increase risk for certain types of cancer, increase the risk of diabetes and cardiovascular disease, and can impair immune system function. And like I mentioned, these effects occur over long-term exposure, so typically from months to years. Pregnant women are encouraged to reduce their exposure to arsenic as much as possible because it can have an adverse or negative effect on the developing fetus. It can also cause lifelong effects in small infants, including delays to neurological and brain development. So arsenic is a contaminant that can be treated either by a point of use or a whole house system, and which system you use will depend on the other contaminants or water quality indicators that are present in your well. We recommend that you test for arsenic every couple of years, and that's because this is what we would consider a geologically derived contaminant, and we don't expect the levels in your well to change much on a monthly or yearly basis. All right, next we have lead. So lead is a naturally occurring element, but it can also be found in homes with older plumbing. And this is because it used to be used in things like plumbing, paints, fixtures, and other devices. In New Hampshire, where we have a lot of older homes, People can become exposed to lead in drinking water when that water has come into contact with the pipes or the fixtures that contain lead, which allows the lead to leach into the drinking water. We recommend that people reduce their exposure to lead as much as possible. Concentrations of lead in drinking water over 15 parts per billion are considered a health risk for the general population because it can increase risk for things like kidney disease, high blood pressure, and it can impair cognitive function and reproductive function and cause changes to the immune system. Concentrations of lead in drinking water over 5 parts per billion are considered a health risk for pregnant women and infants. For pregnant women, there's an increased risk of miscarriage and delayed neurological development in fetuses, infants, and small children, and these effects can be irreversible. Lead in drinking water can be treated, but keep in mind that it may involve investigating the source of lead and changing out fixtures or plumbing in the home if needed. All right, next we have sodium. And sodium is a contaminant that can be found in people's drinking water, and it can either be naturally occurring or from man-made sources such as road salting near the wellhead, or can be even the result of a water softening system used to treat the water for other contaminants. High sodium can pose a health risk for people who have certain pre-existing health conditions such as hypertension, kidney disease, or cardiovascular disease. We consider sodium to be high if it's over 60 parts per million, and that's because that's the level at which individuals who have these pre-existing health conditions might want to have a discussion with their healthcare provider about this excess source of sodium in their drinking water that's contributing to their overall sodium intake. But for most other individuals, this is mainly an aesthetic issue, meaning it can alter the taste of the drinking water. All right, next is radon. So radon is another naturally occurring element that is found in New Hampshire bedrock. And radon can exist both dissolved in the drinking water or as a gas in the air inside your home. Radon is widespread throughout New Hampshire and is a known potent carcinogen due to its radioactivity. Long-term exposure to radon can increase the risk of stomach and lung cancer. And unlike other contaminants that we see in well water, it can become a gas. So when you do things like shower or run the water, it can go into the air where you can breathe it in and increase your risk for lung cancer. Whenever we see private wells that have high radon in water, we recommend that people not only look into treating their water, but also testing their indoor air for radon, again, because radon can go into the air from the water. You can obtain a radon test from a hardware store or by searching the New Hampshire Radon Program, where they can send you a free test kit to test your indoor air for radon. So radon is a little more complicated than other drinking water contaminants because, like I mentioned, it poses a risk in both air and water. And so because of this, it's really important to look at radon in air and water together and reduce your exposure as much as possible. Air is often the greater source of radon exposure, but water can be a significant contributor as well. As a rule of thumb, every 10,000 picocuries per liter of radon in water contributes 1 picocurie per liter in air, and that's on top of the radon that you already have in your indoor air. So reach out to a reputable mitigation company for looking into your different options for treating air and water, and we recommend that you reduce the amount of radon in your air as much as possible to below 4 picocuries per liter. And remember that even though air is usually the greater source of radon exposure, and an air mitigation system will often give the greater reduction in exposure, that's not always the case. So it really is important to look at radon in both water and air. All right, next we have PFAS. So PFAS is an acronym that stands for per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. PFAS is a large family of man-made chemicals that have been used in a variety of commercial applications, industrial processes, and in some consumer products. PFAS can be released into the environment through accidental spills or releases and from normal wear and tear of those consumer products that contain PFAS over time. When PFAS enter the environment, they don't really break down. They kind of just move around. So after decades of use, they've contaminated many drinking water sources around the nation. And because PFAS don't easily break down when they enter our bodies, they can accumulate there, and even small amounts have been associated with health risks. PFAS can enter our bodies through ingestion, typically meaning drinking contaminated water or eating food prepared from that water. PFAS exposure from skin contact is not expected to be a major source of exposure. These compounds are not easily absorbed through the skin, so activities such as showering and bathing are not considered to be major sources of exposure. We're still learning about what exactly PFAS exposure does to the body, but there is evidence that they can increase the risk for kidney and testicular cancer, increase the risk for high cholesterol and high liver enzyme levels, and can cause changes to the immune system and how our hormones work. They also have suspected health risks for pregnant women, infants, and babies. For pregnant women, it can increase the risk of certain conditions, and it can alter the infant's growth and development. PFAS can be treated in drinking water, like many of the other contaminants that I mentioned. All right, and now I'm going to pass it back to Amy for the rest of our part of the presentation. Thank you.
All right, back again. Okay, so DES's recommendations for all private well users are, first, we recommend you test your well for our recommended list of contaminants, which I'll go over in a moment. Then I'm going to tell you about our Be Well Informed web tool, where after you've tested your water, you're going to get some results, and we've created Be Well Informed to help you understand those results and make treatment decisions. So you enter your results in Be Well Informed, and then it'll give you treatment recommendations if you need them. And then if you install a system, you've got to keep up on maintenance and also test your treated water every 3 to 5 years just to make sure it's working. So our list of things to test for is here on the left. A lot of the things that Kim just went over in a lot of detail, but the list is longer. Kim kind of went over the things that are the most common in this area in New Hampshire in general. So, but here's the list on the left, and the times that you want to test are every 3 to 5 years, except for bacteria, which we recommend you test for every year. Also, like after you install a treatment system, you test the treated water to make sure that it's reducing, giving you, the reduction that you need in those contaminants. And when you're buying a home, test the water if the seller hasn't already recently tested, or when you're selling a home, or if the taste and the color and the smell changes. That's a good time to test. Okay, so there is a way that you can request DES to test for PFAS. I definitely don't want to take away from, Granite State Analytical, and we're going to offer some test kits here today and also throughout the week. But there is a reason you may want to put your information in this website to request DES to test your water for PFAS. So we have a PFAS response webpage, and there's a How Can I Help You menu. And if you click on that, there's a private well testing request form that you click on and fill out. But that being said, doing that request doesn't necessarily mean you'll be tested. So there's a few reasons you just want to strike while the iron's hot and go with Granite State's PFAS testing. So a couple of these reasons that I've heard and thought of are, number one, if you want to do this quickly. So if you enter your result in DES's form, they may not get to you for a while, or you may not be anywhere near another PFAS contamination site, so they may not consider you a high priority. So if you want to get your results definitely and quickly, definitely test through to Granite State. So the other thing is, I know not everyone likes to have their water test results publicly available. And we're a public agency, and we can't really hide those results. In fact, we put them on a mapper because people like to know where PFAS is and where it's been detected. And so if it was something where you knew you wouldn't want to have your results on a mapper, then Granite State would be, private lab, and they wouldn't be releasing your information publicly. So those are some reasons you might want to not wait for DES or do that request form for the free PFAS testing. So I'm going to go over next our Be Well Informed tool. And so we developed this web tool, and it's been popular, and it's also been replicated by other states for their private well users. So what it is, you get your water test result, and you take it to Be Well Informed web tool. You enter each result, and it'll give you this report that'll tell you, it'll give you like a red X if it's above the health limit, or a green check if it's not. It'll tell you what the potential health effects are for the things that are above the health limit, and then it'll give you very specific treatment guidance. So this is what it looks like. After you've entered your results, you'll get the red X if it's above health limit, green check if it's not. There's this little tiny print icon that I've put an arrow to just because it's very hard to see, but if you hit that print, it'll let you save it as a PDF or print it. There'll be another section of Be Well Informed that'll look something like this. Hopefully not as many treatments as this person because they need 2 whole house and 1 point of use system. Not everybody has this elaborate. This is kind of a worst case scenario I'm showing on the screen. But it'll tell you what type of treatment systems what you may need for the contaminants that you have. So it'll give you these technologies of treatment. So in this instance, it's telling this person they need a whole house oxidizing filter system, then an acid neutralizer system, and then a point of use reverse osmosis. So it'll give you these specific technologies. And it will also give you more information about the health effects. So if, let's say, for example, you had just arsenic that was above health limit, it was going to tell you very specifically, what are the health effects of arsenic and what is the treatment for arsenic. So that's what we recommend doing after you get your test results. And you can find Be Well Informed. This is a long web link, but it's pretty easy to find by just typing in NHDES Be Well Informed, or even just NH Be Well Informed. That should take you right there. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about treatment, just some basics. But like I said, the Be Well Informed is a great tool to get really specific about treatment when you have your water test done. So when you start learning about treatment, you'll see these terms: point of use versus point of entry. And point of use just means you're using it at the tap where you get your water. And so for certain things, we recommend point of use. And that's for things like arsenic, uranium, PFAS, and sodium. And the main reason, we recommend point of use is, well, number one, it's more affordable. And for these particular things, you don't need to worry about, the other water uses in the home, washing the dishes, flushing it down the toilet, all the things you do with water. It's really only your primary drinking water source that you have to treat. So for point of use, we recommend that for arsenic, uranium, PFAS, and sodium. But of course, as a private well owner, it's up to you. I mean, if you feel more comfortable with whole house and removing it from all the water, that's perfectly fine choice too. So whole house treatment is also referred to as point of entry, and that's going to be a treatment system that treats the water as it's entering the home before it's going through all the plumbing. So for some things you do need point of entry or whole house, and for instance, radon, you need point of entry because what you're doing is you're treating the water to make it release the radon gas and vent it out of the home before it goes through all the plumbing and has a chance to be released into the home. Whole house is also needed often for iron and manganese because they can really stain your plumbing and clog, fixtures and, make your laundry turn red or brown. So that's why whole house is needed for iron and manganese. And if your water is corrosive, like you have a lower pH water, whole house is needed for that because it needs to be treated before it goes through the plumbing, before it gets a chance to corrode the plumbing. So those are some examples of where whole house is needed, which is going to be a little more costly and energy intensive than point of use. Filter pitchers, they're a really inexpensive way to treat water, but just make sure when you look at filter pitchers, you're looking at whether they are certified to remove the things that you have in your water. So a lot of the pitchers on the market are, not necessarily, like a lot of people on public water systems use the pitcher because they don't like the chlorination taste of the little bit of residual chlorine from the public water system. So not all filter pitchers are up to snuff for a private well user that could have a variety of other things in their water. So just check for the certifications. Once you get your water test done, if you want to go for a filter pitcher, just make sure that it's certified to remove what you know you have in your water. This is what the certification symbols tend to look like on treatment. It's not always easy to find them. Sometimes you got to dig to find with their certifications, but generally it's the NSF certifications that you're looking for on a treatment system. Okay, I'm going to say a little bit about bacteria because when you have total coliform bacteria and or E. coli, it's a little bit different of a task to get rid of it than just installing a treatment system. So when you have coliform bacteria present, number one, it is common. It's a common part of our soil, the first few feet of soil, and when you have heavy storms, it'll be picking up coliform bacteria and kind of washing it past your wellhead. It's common in springs and lakes and rivers. If it's present in your water test, what you want to do is look at your well itself. If it looks like one of these on the picture, these are a little dicey. So you can see there's some pathways. The wellhead there with a hole that probably had a line coming out of it, and someone took it out and just left the hole empty. That's a pathway for critters to be getting in there. Even insects could be introducing soil and bacteria. Dug wells are more vulnerable to having bacteria. So look at if there's ways you can improve your wellhead itself, make it more watertight, sealed from stormwater entry or animals, critters, insects. If you have E. coli, you definitely have to be boiling your water before drinking it, because that's a kind of immediate health hazard. So inspect your wellhead. If you're uncertain, you can certainly hire a well professional, licensed well contractor to assess your wellhead and even the well itself to see where where's the pathway of entry for bacteria. Once you've kind of figured out the pathway of entry of bacteria and blocked that off and improved the well, you can disinfect your water. That's another whole process where you're killing the bacteria in the current water and then flushing it out and then retesting after a period of time to make sure you've eliminated it. And sometimes, unfortunately, with the older dug wells and the wells that are buried with no wellhead, a new well is sometimes the only remedy. Okay, so just a little bit about bottled water. It's definitely a safe option. Bottled water companies are regulated similarly to a public water system where they're required to be testing for certain things and removing them if they're above health limits. But they do come with, obviously, an incremental cost. You're paying for bottled water over time. And there's the issue of plastic waste. So if you can go through with testing your water and installing treatment system if you need it, that's, at times a less expensive alternative. The other thing is sometimes people test their well water and they find out, wow, it's really good. So they've been buying this bottled water and they haven't needed to. So that may be the case with you as well. And lastly, I'm almost done with our portion of the presentation, but just a little word about the roadside springs. We actually don't recommend folks use the roadside springs, and the main reason is it's sort of an unknown source. You don't really know where that water's coming from, and spring water itself can definitely have coliform bacteria because it's water bubbling up to the surface of the earth, and it hasn't had the benefit of the filtration of the rock and soil like a deeper well has. So we don't recommend using the roadside springs. All right, so at this point, we'll open it up to questions if there are any for Kim or me. Anyone got any questions? I don't know if we have a way to get from our remote listeners or... And if not, too, if you can always ask us after the workshop, too, one-on-one.
Well, you just mentioned roadside springs. Where are these roadside springs?
I don't know.
Okay, so...
I'm not sure if there are any or Derry.
If they're along the road and there's some concerns about them, they're probably on property owned by the state of New Hampshire. They could be. So shouldn't the state test if you're concerned that maybe they're contaminated?
Yeah, I think we have considered over the years doing that type of thing, but concluded that there's just no way to kind of put them under the umbrella of being regulated like a public water system is, because it's sort of like they're here and there and everywhere. They're not formal in any sense. They're sort of.
Okay, so we really don't know where they're at, how many there are.
I mean, I don't personally know. I've heard of some of them, but no, it's not something that
I have another question, and that is about radon.
Sure.
I believe you mentioned something about that it could be treated with water filters, but it's also in the air. So like in the cellar of your house, potentially if there's cracks in the foundation, potentially radon because it's also airborne. And so you mentioned about evacuating it from the house. In order to do that, you've got to have some kind of a system that sucks it and blows it out, which probably is quite expensive, right?
Yes, so you want to test the air in the home. And if it is above 4 picocuries per liter, it's recommended that you install an air treatment system.
Yeah, what are those things you just mentioned? What?
An air treatment, a radon air mitigation?
No, the limit.
Oh, 4 picocuries per liter.
Well, the average person doesn't have a clue what those are. And the average person is not going to test that. You would have to have a company come in to do that testing, correct?
You could hire a company to do the testing, or you could, you want to come to the microphone? Why don't you come to the microphone? I know the people on TV can't hear.
So the picocuries per liter is just a unit of measurement.
Right.
We figured that out. You don't have to know.
No. The average
exactly
person
what it
doesn't have
is.
a clue.
No, they wouldn't. I didn't either.
No.
We test for radon in the air, and the process is very simple. You get 2 plastic canisters filled with charcoal from us. You set them up in your basement, record the temperature, record the time, leave them there for 48 hours undisturbed. You come back, you cap them up, you bring them in, and we send them up for testing at our sister lab, A&L lab in Auburn, Maine. And they can come back to you with the results. So the process is very easy for you to do.
Okay, so it sounds like you're saying they're heavy in the air. They're not being drafted into the charcoal? How is the charcoal going to pick
It's
it
a
up?
passive collection system, and so the charcoal will collect the radon from the air. It's just what it does.
So
The radon's attracted to the charcoal.
So the radon is heavy and would drop
I
down?
don't know about the weight, but it is drawn to the charcoal, and charcoal does absorb the radon.
I would think it would have to be drafted in to actually pick it up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But
So that's how that works, and there is systems. I had one in my old house, and way back in the day, about 20 years ago, probably cost me $1,200. But they drill a hole in your foundation,
right.
and put it down there and suck the air from beneath the slab before it gets into your foundation, into your basement. Pipe it up over the roof, and there's a fan that's running 24/7.
There you go, yeah. And what I'm concerned is a lot of concrete foundations get cracks in them.
Yeah.
And I would think maybe radon could seep in from
Yeah,
there.
so the theory behind this is that it takes all the radon out from underneath the subsurface before it can get to the cracks.
Okay. All right, well, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Does the depth of the well have anything to do with the amount of contaminants that enter the house?
So in general, we recommend all well owners test for the whole list that we give there. But yes, I have heard that for more shallow wells, you tend to deal more with things that are pollutants, like from the surface down, like PFAS or sodium from road salting or bacteria, whereas the deeper wells often will have more of the rock soil-based radon and arsenic and uranium.
And how many feet do you consider a shallow well?
Well, I think some of the dug wells are like 15, 20, 30 type. Yeah.
So
yeah,
mine's 180 feet, so that would not be a shallow well.
Yeah, I assume it's like a drilled artesian well. Yeah. We also will stick around if you want to ask us one-on-one questions at the end too. But let's take one more question and then we'll pass it on to Granite
Well, this
State.
is just, you had talked about the health issues, and I know that they can test your blood as well for PFOAs, and I was just wondering if you wanted to put that out there for people who want to do that. And the only other thing I'd like to point out is I know a lot of people want to be private about having these contaminants in their wells for whatever reasons, but it's really important to have that map to kind of track where it's spreading, how it's going, because we think of it as underneath our world is another world of underground rivers and waters and aquifers and whatnots. And every time we blow something up to build in a new house or do construction or whatever, we're moving this groundwater into different veins. And I think by people giving that information, it really helps you guys track how this contaminant is moving through the ground. So from what I can tell is you could have could have PFAS, and your house is right next door, and you don't have it because the water might come this way and your water stream goes and this one. So it's very good to keep that. So I just wanted people to be aware that giving that information to the state is very, very important for you guys to keep track of how this is flowing through our underground. But if you could speak to the health issue, I think that's important too.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So, our recommendation is always that if you have concern about a specific contaminant and how it affects your health, like say you do have PFAS in your water, that you work with your healthcare provider to seek out next steps. And so things like blood testing, if that's warranted, that would be something that your healthcare provider can work with you to look into. So that's sort of our recommendation there. Thank you.
We're going to turn things over to Granite State Analytical. Hold on just a minute. Let me get their presentation up.
So good evening, and thank you for coming out. My name is John Lyons, and I own Granite State Analytical here in Derry, and have for the past 20 years. My employee Val did a fantastic job putting together a presentation about sampling for you, but I did, before she gets started, want to get up and thank the community from the bottom of my heart. You've welcomed me into Derry. You've supported my business through the residents, through the town, and through the other businesses in town. So thank you for that, and I really appreciate that. And with that, Val Connolly is going to talk a little bit about sampling.
Okay, so as our friends from DES have pointed out, knowing and understanding what is in your water is very important to your health, very important to your daily operations, and your clean laundry too. It's very important to that as well. And a part of that is making sure that you take your sample correctly as well. You know, you don't want to have any issues along the way that might have skewed the results and things. So I'm just gonna go right ahead, jump on in here. So yeah, as I said, there are points of error in sampling that can skew your results. It's possible that, something was taken incorrectly, maybe, radon is a gas. We'll go over how that can be sampled incorrectly or correctly. Some of these results and analyses, they do have time constraints on them. So when you're thinking about your water and thinking about testing your water, it's very important to have that timeline in mind, right? That radon air analysis that takes at least 48 hours and it needs to be undisturbed, so that's something you have to plan around. Bacteria analysis, it has to be done in 24 hours, so make sure it's brought back into the lab. And bacteria in some instances can be swayed, and as in dug wells, heavy rainfall can influence the amount of bacteria that could be found in there. So these are a couple things to think about just so you are aware of what's in your water and how that affects your health. So first and foremost, we recommend choosing the faucet that's used primarily for drinking water. That was typically, one of the ones that was mentioned as being a primary drinking water source, not your cleaning kitchen tap, not your shower head. And on these, we recommend doing it at that faucet because it can depend on what is found there. So any taps with aeration that should be taken off. Any minerals or bacteria and things, those can be built up onto that faucet head, that aerator there. So it's very important that if your tap does have it, you get it taken off. Another important thing about choosing the tap that you take it from is various homes do have filtration systems already existing. Maybe you just bought a new home and hey, it comes with a water softener, that's great. But depending on the information that you're looking to get, you want to see if that softener system still works. That is going to dictate, what tap you take it from. Maybe you take one at a tap before that filtration and afterwards. That way you can see what is coming out of the ground and how well your filtration system is doing after that as well. So after, picking your tap and removing that aerator screen there, for almost all of our sampling procedures, you're going to run that water. Contaminants can be built up in that system there, and also, stagnant samples were mentioned. Things can develop down there and percolate and stuff. So we want to flush the water. We want to see how your running water is looking and what is coming up in that, especially with living organisms like bacteria. If you have it stagnant and it's sitting there for a while, you get a whole ton. Or if you run the water for 5 minutes or something, you could get a different portion in there. So it's very important to make sure that you're following these sampling instructions accurately. Okay, radon and VOC vials. These, as you can see by these lovely nice pictures, are tested in glass vials. For radon, it happens to be a clear, unpreserved vial. For volatile organics, which aren't shown here, unfortunately, those are some amber vials. They do have some preservative in there. Those are like gasolines, oils, those types of things. But on these slides, I primarily focus on radon just because it is a nice visual and it is an unpreserved container. So filling these, radon is a gas, all right? We want to make sure that it gets trapped in there. So you're going to slow that water down after, having it full crank, running for 3 to 5 minutes, flushing things out. You're going to slow it down again. And that allows you to kind of slowly fill up these glass amber vials so that you get that nice little meniscus that you can kind of see in that middle photo right there, that little bubble across the top. And that's going to ensure that when you do close that up and you turn it over, get a little tap, see if any air bubbles come up in there. We want as little to no air in there as possible. We want to make sure that you have the most accurate analysis on your radon so that none escapes. In this last photo here, checking for air, sometimes it can be a little frustrating having to work with that tap, different pressures and things. It's hard to get all of the air out of that vial, especially if you're not doing it all the time, like someone like myself. So, typically we say there's a little bit of wiggle room there. It will be noted on any paperwork, just so you have an idea. But once you get to that bottom left one there, it's a little bit too much for us, and we'd ask you if you'd like to resample, because again, we're doing this for you. The work that we do is for you. We want to make sure it's as accurate as possible when it's in our hands. Continuing on, our inorganics analysis. This will cover a lot of different things, that copper, lead, manganese, arsenic, hardness. It goes over those safety pieces like nitrate and nitrite. And when it comes to this, this is also an instance where you would want to be considering your sample sites, where you'll be taking your samples. A lot of times, these are the things that are some of the concerns when people have filtration system. They have that hardness in there, they have softeners in there, they want to evaluate how it's working. And so, this is something to consider. Something that I did highlight on here is nitrate and nitrite. It is classified under inorganics analysis. However, these two kind of work together, and we consider them like safety pieces. Nitrate and nitrite often come from waste runoffs, fertilizer runoffs, that sort of thing. And nitrite, I like to remember, nitrite, I come first, and that quickly oxidizes into its ionized form of nitrate. And a high amount of nitrate, that can cause things like, blue baby syndrome, that sort of thing, lack of oxygen being carried through the blood. And so these two things we like to take a look at. Some of the first things that come out on your water analysis. And if there's any issues, we're going to give you a call and we're going to say, hey, there's a little bit of nitrate in here, but there's still a good amount of nitrite in here as well. So we're here with you looking at these results saying, there's a high level of this like fertilizer waste contaminant, and there's a good amount of indicator that this is a recent contamination too. So this is something that we'll discuss with you. And that's something that I just wanted to point out because it is inorganic, but it is a safety concern. Running right up next, bacteria. Here again, you're going to run that water. As I'd mentioned, it is a living organism. We want to make sure it's what's in your running water, not after it's been sitting for a while, making friends and stuff, And when you are taking a sample of this, you could be taking just a bacteria sample, our basic thing, or our comprehensives. At that point, you're going to want to be disinfecting the tap. Bacteria can build up on that tap there, and we want to see what's in your water, not in the tap itself. So it's very important that you do disinfect it, especially in some instances where a home has a drinking water tap, but they have that aerator and it's built in, it's one of those new nice taps, they can't get it off. So they go to their next best thing, it's their bathroom faucet, and they can get that aerator off there, but they forget to disinfect. Especially on a bathroom tap, E. coli can hang out there. It's in a bathroom faucet, but it's not in your water. So it's very important that when you are sampling this, that disinfection of that tap happens, and you fill up that bottle entirely just to make sure that we have exactly what we're looking for. And as mentioned here again, volume and time requirements. There is a small little line that you'll notice on those bottles there. We want to make sure that it's above that line. We want to make sure that there's enough water there to hold any of these contaminants, any of these living organisms, so that we can more easily identify them. And again, time, we like them back within 24 hours so that we can get them done accurately. Sorry, yes. So the question was, if you have a sediment filter, would you want to bypass it, especially when taking a bacteria sample? With that, it is possible that sediment and particulate filters can filter out those organisms, however, not into its entirety. And sometimes in instances where they're really old and really cruddy and already have issues with their source water, bacteria can live in those filtration systems as well, which is why people sometimes don't want to do only the bypass. They want to do the before and they want to do the after, because there is a lot of variables that can come in between there. Yes, sir. So, right, and that is something that people want to get specifically from that wellhead, specifically from that point of entry, going downstairs and taking a look at that system. That is definitely something that you can do and is recommended to do. We say that we include that all together in just the primary drinking water tap because bacteria can live in your system. There may not be a problem with the source, which is, again, something why people take additional sources to kind of narrow these things down and find the cause of this issue, because there are spots where contamination can come in the plumbing system. Do you have something to say?
Running the water for 3 to 5 minutes. It's coming from the well at that point, not from the pipes.
Another reason to run the water.
Generally, bacteria is taken from a distribution system in a municipal system. And in your house, you would want to do the same thing. Unless you're filling up your water bottle down in the basement at the source. I would take it from the place that you are drinking it from.
Yeah. Thank you, John. All right, going to continue on from bacteria. PFAS, per and polyfluoroalkyl compounds. Okay, these are the new hot ticket contamination, something that people are keeping their eye out for, something that we're finding more reasons for health and safety concerns. And we have recently been able to do this testing here in-house at Granite State Analytical. These test kits, they have similar sampling instructions to some of the other ones, taking the aerator off, running the water for a little bit. With these, they do have some preservative in there. So you'll notice that if you do grab any of our test kits, there are some gloves included in there. We got those specifically. They're PFAS-free gloves. That is a source of contamination, and when it comes to, the environment. Speaking of sources of contamination in the sampling environment, something that we do offer are field blanks. So that's kind of a control piece in that sampling environment saying, hey, we took this water from your lab and we poured it off and we're finding PFAS compounds in it. Well, okay, maybe there's a reason to look for some contamination in the home. Maybe, you had some food wrappers on the counter, right? There are PFAS in those things. There's things to consider when it comes to taking your sample. And with these compounds can really start interacting when the heat is applied to them. So it's important, especially with these ones and bacteria, that if possible, it's kept cold, kept on ice, a little cooler caddy, that's real nice, especially when getting it to the lab, especially if you can't get it to us immediately. So yeah, just a quick overview, points of error, they are very important with your water testing. This is in your hands. We're making sure that once it's in our hands, we got it from here. We have standards, we have control measures, we have all of that, and we're very confident in that. And so we want to make sure that you're confident in that as well, and part of that is with your sampling procedures. So it's just very important to keep an eye out for any air in those radon and VOC vials. Those radon ones, if you get any air, dump them out, try again. There's no preservative, feel free to try again. Keep an eye on those hold times, any bacteria or nitrates. Those are definitely something to keep an eye on. Make sure you get those to the lab back in 24 to 48 hours. And keep an eye on bacterial contamination. Make sure if you're doing any bacteria testing, disinfect that tap really, really, really well. We want to make sure that we're checking for any bacteria that's in your water. I don't want to give you a false scare. And then, so you followed all your sampling instructions. That's great. We took care of it. We took it from there. Now we're sending you a report. We do something a little bit combined with a report, as well as, I guess, the Be Informed portion of NHDES. Right here on a report, you're going to see a nice little legend there that says things are passing, things are failing. That's not something that you want to see. Failing some standards, so that's health and safety standards. Then you're going to go down, a little upside down yellow triangle, that's secondary. Those are those aesthetic concerns that were mentioned. So you're going to have a little bit of taste, a little bit of odor, might smell a little funky, that sort of cause a little staining, that sort of thing. State guideline failure. So EPA and NHDES at the time of this, had different health and safety standards for radon. The state has them a little bit lower. They have a little bit more concern. So when there is a differentiation of that, if we're all in Derry residents taking them in New Hampshire, so if it failed the state guideline, you'd notice that blue X on there. And then going a little bit further, that attention flag that's on there, that triangle with the orange or little exclamation point in there, that's that coliform bacteria that was mentioned. That coliform bacteria, that's a huge family of bacteria. E. coli does fall into that family of bacteria. However, no E. coli was detected in this sample, which is great. However, this wants to still draw your attention, saying, yeah, there's no E. coli here, that's great, no safety concerns. But there's something to keep an eye on here. Maybe there's somewhere that bacteria is getting into your system. Maybe you need to have someone come out and inspect the wellhead. Maybe it's a little bit lower to the ground, you need an extension or something, or maybe something cruddy got in there, you need a chlorination flush, that sort of thing. So that's why you'll see that attention flag on there. And thankfully, with all of our reports, they actually do come with contaminant fact sheets. We have one that we made up for our lab, to quickly put with our reports. It really just gives quick blurbs about all of the limits that NHDES has gone over in the EPA. But then with that, if we have, see these failed primaries on uranium, we have fact sheets put together by the EPA and NHDES that go over in-depth health and safety concerns, the history of that contaminant, as well as proposing some similar treatment options and a couple of different things that you can look at. We are not here to sell you treatment. That's not something that we do. We are here solely so that you are informed about your water, solely so that you are confident in the safety, or so that you are confident in the steps that you can take going forward to treat this. We're happy to recommend out any treatment vendors. We work with people all over the state. You can go in your region. I can give you tons of different people to call. But this is where we stop, making sure that your water is clean. And we'd be happy to go over any of those concerns that you have. But again, yeah, it is really important that the confidence in these results, the confidence that we can give to you, starts with your sampling. So just make sure that all of the sampling instructions are followed. That way, that confidence can bridge between you and us. All right? And that is all I have for you today. Okay? Thank you so much. If anyone else has any questions, let me know. And with this, we are hosting for this week and next week, all the way up until April 25th. That's a Friday. We're doing 20% off our typical water testing. Those are our comprehensive kits, which falls along with the state of New Hampshire recommends testing. And then, of course, we do have our PFAS kits here as well. Yeah, and I have some little swag and stuff with our phone number on it, so you can always call up, ask me any questions or anything. Grab our contact card, please. It's free to grab these kits. It's free to have our phone number. I'd rather you have it so that you knew someone, myself, who'd be happy to answer any of the questions that you have. Okay, thank you. Oh, yes, absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for reminding me. I'm so sorry. So you can come and grab our test kits. They are here. We're here with them, a whole bunch of them. And then whatever we don't give out tonight, it's going to stay here. Courtney, our wonderful health officer, she has some information about where to find those here in the building. And then, of course, our lab is right here, right up the road, not 5 minutes away in Derry here. We have people there 8 to 4. We'd be happy to grab you these kits and stuff. However, we do have a 24/7 pickup lobby. Those kits are out there. We leave them for all of our residents. So while we do have some special paperwork here noting saying, hey, Derry Water Week, there are the exact same test kits out in our 24/7 lobby. They just don't have, the special little highlighted note on them, but we're keeping an eye out for you guys. We're keeping an eye out. If you come by in our 24/7 lobby, pick one up, and I see you guys come in and it says Derry resident, I'm still gonna give you that discount because I know what you guys are looking for. I know you're trying to make sure your water's clean, and we're here for that. We're absolutely here for that. And of course, we do have our information link, info@granitestateanalytical.com, that would connect you with myself or any of my other wonderful colleagues at the front office there. They are wealths of knowledge and can help you with any sampling instructions or any testing recommendations. We're really glad to help. Yeah, thank you very much. Lovely. I don't know how to turn this off. Thank you for reminding me. I kind of sputtered out, didn't I?